Welcome back, everybody. Now to part of our week-long coverage of A Stronger America, the Black Agenda. New analysis of the U.S. prison population finds more black men are incarcerated now than were enslaved in 1850. The figures are stunning. They are sobering, eye-opening numbers. The latest estimates by the Bureau of Justice putting the number of imprisoned African-American men at more than 846,000. While black men account for roughly 6.5% of the U.S. population, they make up 40.2% of the prison population. And joining me now is Mark Lamont Hill, professor of education and African American studies at Columbia University and host of Our World with Black Enterprise. So Mark, it's good to have you here.
Good to be here.
When we talk about this, it's a problem not discussed enough. However, when we talk about these sobering statistics that are out now, it really is eye-opening and I think staggering for people to consider. So why is it that this country is putting away so many African American men? Do we have a definite reason for it?
Well, that's committed to punishment rather than dealing with the fundamental problems that lead to mass incarceration. In 1970, for example, we only had about 250 to 300,000 people incarcerated. Now, in 2011, we have 2.5 million people. We didn't raise a generation of criminals. We shifted public policy in such a way that it's easier to get incarcerated. The net is wider and it's deeper. We live in a nation.
But wasn't that done out of noble causes to begin with? I mean, with the population growth and the fact that crimes in this day and age are expanding to different fronts that people probably hadn't even considered then, including technology crimes. Does it make a difference in how we interpret these numbers?
Well, most people aren't in jail for the things like technology crimes or other white-collar crimes. Most people are in jail. The prison boom comes, in fact, from the war on drugs, which begins in the mid-'80s, 1984, when drug use was actually at a low. Before crack actually hits the streets, we begin a war on drugs, which really turns out to be a war on small-time drug users. 4 out of 5 people who are incarcerated for drugs are not dealers, they're small-time users. And again, that's a criminalization of a medical problem. We've decided to use punishment instead of social resources.
So the new NAACP report ties state spending to investments in education. So nationwide, $88,000 is spent on each incarcerated juvenile a year, while just $9,000 is spent educating each student. So can we approach this problem? And I know you just mentioned this about education. I mean, is that the answer to this over-incarceration issue, is the education of the youth of America?
It's a solution. It's not the only solution. There's no silver bullet to the mass incarceration crisis. But certainly we live in a nation that's committed to first-class jails and second-class schools. If we decide that we can put that money in education, yes, we would reduce the prison population. The fact is there's a relationship between literacy rates and prison. There's a relationship between dropout rates, early childhood education, early literacy, mentoring, sports participation. All these things connect to prison. So if we understand that we can invest early, we pay now or we pay later. It's really that simple.
Let's also take a look at parenting, because the stats here are pretty eye-opening as well, because 1 in 15 black children have a parent that is in prison compared to 1 in 111 white kids. So are we just watching and witnessing as generations continue to grow up a vicious cycle that's becoming ingrained within the black community itself?
Well, we have to be careful with the way we talk about that. There is a cycle of mass incarceration within poor communities and African American communities, but we want to be careful not to suggest that mass incarceration is due to some kind of culture of poverty, as if poor people or black people are more inclined to go to prison. The fact is, black people are targeted for prison more. If I went to Harvard University or Princeton University on a Friday night, I can incarcerate a lot of people or arrest a lot of people for, simple possession of drugs, for public drunkenness, for public urination, for disorderly conduct. But we're not looking at Harvard and Princeton, but we go to poor neighborhoods like in New York where three counties produce 70% of the state's prisoners. Those are poor black and brown people. That's the fundamental issue. At the same time, we do need to consider how mass incarceration takes fathers out of homes. It takes people out of active citizenship. It really deteriorates the community, and that's what we need to think about.
All right, Mark Lamont Hill, great to have you on today, Mark.
Always
really appreciate it. And our series, A Stronger America, the Black Agenda, airs all week on MSNBC, then with a special show this Sunday at noon Eastern, hosted by our own Ed Schultz. Dangerous storms along